Hello, Paul. How are you today?
Good, Cindy. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm so thankful to have you on to tell your story. And hopefully, we'll get some people in the chat. I know it's the day after the holiday. And if not, I'll be sharing the heck out of this because this is some really good information.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for the invite to have the chat.
Hello, Jeff. This guy I met him at local meetups, like in
Hey, Jeff.
Columbus. And this is my granddaughter who is making me a great grandma. Yeah. But yeah, so a little bit about your background that people may or may not know.
Sure. Well, pretty much going back into my teenage years, I've led a very, very healthy life. I've been an athlete all growing up. Um, I found the sport of volleyball when I was 15 years old in high school and decided that was going to be the sport I pursued going forward. Um, Luckily, in high school, we had a great team, did very well in our state championships. And I went to college with a scholarship in volleyball and pursued my education through there. Around the time I was about 19, I found the sport of beach volleyball. And it's a little bit different than the indoor sport, where on the beach, instead of teams of six, you have teams of two and everything else stays the same. The court dimensions are the same. The rules are the same for the most part. Couple different rules in the doubles game. But what I found was I really liked that sport more than I liked the six-man game. And so when I graduated college, that was the sport I decided to pursue rather than the indoor game. So I stopped playing indoor in 1993 and pursued the beach game and decided to move to Florida and started to pursue my professional career. Lived in Florida for a year, had some success down there, and moved to California and had a wonderful professional career out there. Um, didn't go 100% smooth because I had two knee injuries, which both required surgeries
Yep.
in 1997 and 1998. Because I'm not the tallest player in the world, it did affect my game. I still had some success, but not the success that I was having prior to those knee surgeries. Flash forward to 2004 and 5, I ended up having two really bad shoulder injuries, left shoulder first, then the right shoulder. The
Wow.
three surgeries that I had, the two knees and the left shoulder, I did the surgery, recovered from them, had a wonderful physical therapy, and was back playing my sport in about anywhere from 4 to 6 months after each surgery, which was I was ahead of the game with the protocol. But the right shoulder was the kicker. When I woke up in recovery, I was in so much pain, much worse pain than I had from any of my other surgeries. The rehab was terrible. I had no strength in it. I just was not rehabbing well. It took a long, long time before I was even remotely ready to get back into the sport. But I rehabbed enough. I did what I needed to do and was able to get back. But what I was noticing was about a year after that rehab was done and I was back playing the sport, I was having some really weird feelings. A lot of dizziness, a lot of off balance type feeling to myself. But I was just kind of ignoring them and just pushing through because that's what I did. Whatever
Right.
it took to play my sport, that's what I did.
Yep.
But so I just pushed through and pushed through and pushed through. And I used to go to Australia every during their season, which was their summer season, is opposite of us. Our summer is their winter, their summer is our winter. So I would
Right.
finish out my season here, I would travel down to Australia, play their season, then I would come back and make it just a year-round thing. I was competing 10 months out of the year every year. When I
Mm-hmm.
went down there in 2011 or 2012, sorry, um, I just was not having a good time down there. The dizziness was not going away. I was feeling like crap the whole time I was down there. I was having to pee all the time. I was having just all this health challenges that I just couldn't figure out. Now, the reason I wasn't equating peeing all the time and a really excessive thirst to diabetes was because I had just had the surgery, and it was the first time I ever had to take painkillers, and I thought it was my body's way of trying to flush the toxins out of my body. Excessive
Right.
thirst, and the excessive thirst led to the urination. There was just no correlation in my mind that this could have been diabetes. Number one, because of that, but number two, I had been healthy all my life. There was
Right.
no reason to ever think this could be anything diabetes, type 2 or type 1. So I just ignored everything and I just kept trying to push through. But it got to the point where I couldn't even finish tournaments. Like I would get down into the fifth match of the day and I was just like, I had to tell my teammate, I'm done. I just have nothing left in the tank. So I ended up coming home from Australia early before the season down there was done. And I finally met with my doctors and telling them, what was going on. And I was diagnosed with everything under the sun. Still not diabetes, but I was diagnosed with
Wow.
9-positional vertigo because of all the dizzy spells that I was having
Mm.
and all of this weird feeling. They had diagnosed me with vertigo and these exercises to do at home and all this physical therapy stuff, and nothing was, helping with any of it. So that led me into the year 2013. What I was noticing then, and what my friends were starting to notice, that I was losing a crap ton of weight. I had always been a healthy 165, and I was noticing that my 32-inch waist jeans were starting to feel really, really loose on me, where I needed a belt for them. And that made absolutely no sense because I was eating like a horse at the time. I was eating carbohydrates, so
Hmm.
whatever. There was no reason I should have been losing weight. And that brought me into the late parts of 2013 and early 2014, where I took a look at myself in the mirror and I could actually see my rib cage. My body had cannibalized itself so much that I was down to 109 soaking wet from 165.
Wow.
And
Holy cow.
I didn't even realize it until somebody took a photo of me, and I've still got the photo on Facebook. Um, my jaw, you could just so emaciated. It just couldn't believe it. And the rib cage, it was just bad. It was just really bad. So in 2014, in about May, I went to my primary again, and I'm like, look, it's not vertigo. They thought I had a parasite because I got back from Australia and I was starting to lose weight and all this stuff. I was treated for a parasite. I'm like, it's not a parasite. There is something going on. They finally took a blood sugar test on me, and my fasting blood sugar was 445. And I
Oh
was
my
like,
word.
yeah, I was like,
Fasting.
yeah,
Oh.
fasting. Yeah. So I was like, okay, what does this mean? And my PCP was like, well, my guess is you probably have diabetes. And I'm sitting there like, type 1 or type 2. The only thing I knew about type 1 was that you had to take insulin for it. There was no mitigating
Mm.
that. And he's like, well, I would think type 2 because you're an adult and you have no history of it in your family, and the whole 9 yards. But in the back of my mind, where I was hoping that was the diagnosis, in the back of my mind was like, I knew what the presenting circumstances were with type 2 insulin resistance. And I'm like, I didn't lead a life of what was I perceived to be type 2. I was a very active individual. Yes, I ate carbohydrates, but I was always working out. So there was no reason why I should have been having the bouts of insulin resistance that I perceived as type 2. And but he put me on metformin as they do and told me,
Mhm.
get as much exercise as you could, which to me that's no big deal, and try to cut back on all the carbohydrates that I could, which okay, I can do that. That's not a problem. So I cut out all the breads, all the starches, all the rice, all, what I perceive to be carbohydrates. But they didn't tell me like a couple things like sweet potatoes would not be a good idea. That, regular potatoes, no, I will avoid those. But sweet potatoes, no, I can have those because those are healthy carbs. I can do those. And what was the other thing that I was like, oh, I think my doctor said Cheerios are okay because they're whole grains. And I was like, yeah, but that's 20 grams of carbohydrates. And he's like, yeah, that's good. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, good. That's 20 grams of carbohydrates. I don't think I
Yeah.
should be eating that.
You're
But I
lucky that your doctor told you that, because Brian's physician, he told him, "Oh, you need carbs."
oh, yeah,
And it was
yeah,
crazy. It was just crazy.
yeah.
But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, no, that's totally fine. No, as a type 2, I think they're telling you that you can eat more carbs than what typically you should be eating. I mean, low carb never
Mhm.
even entered this, at that point in time. But I was just thinking in my brain, I'm like, I'm seeing 20 grams of carbs. I wasn't even thinking about the fiber because I knew from like chemistry days and biology days that even though something is insoluble versus soluble, it doesn't matter. Your body is still going to absorb it no matter what. It just may not be all of it, but it's still going to absorb it. So I wasn't paying attention to the fiber. I was just paying attention to the carbohydrate amounts. So
Right.
I was total carbs long before, total carbs were a thing. That's what I was looking at,
Mhm.
regardless. So, so I was trying to cut back as much as I could. But I was looking at the wheat bread and I was looking at lower carb wheat bread. So I found some lower carb bread that were 8 grams total. Again, before the keto breads were out, I was like looking at low carb and I'm like, okay, eight carbs total for a slice. I can fit this in. I can do this. So in my brain, I was doing the right thing, but my body was still like, dude, you're still not understanding this. Okay.
Mhm.
Because 3 months later, I went for another blood work and my blood sugar jacked up to 490. And that was fasting, even though I was still trying to get as much exercise as I could, trying to reduce the carbs as much as I could, or what I thought I was doing was reducing the carbs. Turns out I wasn't. Um, at that point in time, the end of my PCP was like, okay, I've done as much as I could with you. We need to refer you to an endocrinologist. So my 109-pound soaking wet body traipses into the endocrinology office. I sit in her office waiting for her to come in. She comes in, and now remember, this is 3 months after the fact. She comes in, introduces herself, shakes my hand, and says, "You need to go to emergency now." And I'm telling them, and I'm calling them to tell them that you're coming. And the belligerent athlete of me is like, "What are you talking about? Why do I need to go to emergency?" And I'm like, I can do this. Just tell me what to do. She's like, "Tell you what to do. You need to be on insulin." And I'm calling them to tell them to run these sets of tests on you, to confirm it. Um, but I'm still fighting. I'm like, I don't need to be on insulin. I've got this. Just give me the whens and wheres and I can do this. I'll work out every single day and I'll totally just eat protein and we'll call it. I don't have to be on insulin. And she's like, that's when she gets into my face and she's like, "I'm trying to save your life. Get to emergency." So me, I'm like, now you're just being melodramatic. Really? I'm trying to save my life. Give me a break here. But I knew that everything that I was doing wasn't helping. So, okay, maybe I should go to emergency and see what they've got to say. So I went to emergency. I ended up staying overnight in emergency. They got me on an insulin drip and no food that whole entire night. Now, when you're diagnosed as diabetic, your metabolism is so hungry because you're not absorbing any nutrients that you're eating and they're just going right through your body, that I was starving every 2 to 3 hours. I needed something to eat. So at that point in time, going the entire night without something, I was like, God, give me a break here. So, but I was able to make it through on the insulin drip all night long. The fasting blood sugar came down from 490 to 93. Okay, good. 93.
Yes.
Decent blood sugar. Ask me what they brought me for breakfast into that room that next day. Yeah, this is
A
like
lot of carbs, no doubt.
99%. Yeah, 99% sure I'm diabetic at this point. Whether or not type 2 or type 1, we're still unsure. They bring me in 2 pancakes, 2 eggs, a thing of yogurt, half a pint of milk, and a cup of orange juice. And I'm sitting there like, wait a minute. This is a lot of carbs sitting. I'm going over in my brain, not saying anything. This seems like an awful lot of carbs if I'm like supposed to be, diabetic. I'm like, I don't think I should be eating all this. So I ate and I had the appointment to go back to the endocrinologist later that day. So I'm like, let me just eat the yogurt, the eggs. Oh, and there was also a banana on that tray. I go, let me eat the eggs, the yogurt, and I'll have half the banana, and hopefully that'll all work out. Yeah, that all worked out great because later on I went to the endocrinologist and my sugar went up from 93 to 385. So,
mackerel.
yeah. So, and I also, did I have lunch? I don't think I had lunch in the emergency, but yeah, so that was crazy that what I perceived to be a small amount of carbs jacked my blood sugar up almost 300 points. So
Wow.
that was when the endocrinologist sat down with me and basically gave me the information that changed my life. And that was, I was type 1. They call it LADA, which is latent autoimmune diabetes in adults, LADA. So I was diagnosed as LADA, but essentially it's type 1. It's got the same exact symptoms. She basically spelled it out for me that I was going to have to be on injectable insulin the rest of my life. She said that because she wasn't like into the whole low carb atmosphere, she was like, nothing has to change. You just are going to have to learn how to count your carbs and take insulin based on the number of carbs that you're eating and learn how to do that. She also introduced what's called the basal insulin, and that's the background insulin that goes on with your body. At that time, I was on multiple daily injections. So I was having to take a separate injection for my basal and then the fast-acting rapid insulin for all my mealtime carbohydrates, as well as corrections. If my blood sugar got above a certain level, I would have to take a correction.
You were a pincushion.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. And because I was so thin, putting these needles into myself, it was like I would feel every single needle. Now, I was not a needle person to begin with. That's one of the reasons why I was so belligerent in the beginning, because she wanted me to poke my fingers 7 times a day. And I was like, are you crazy? I can't stand needles. And then having to inject myself, I'm like, oh my God. So
I bet my husband's got you beat on that, hating needles.
Yeah.
If he gets a flu shot, he has to lay down. If he gets blood work, he has to lay down.
Blood work done.
He does, or he'll pass out.
Yeah, same. And it's funny because I could watch the needles go into my abdomen because they were those small little pen cap needles. Mm-hmm. So I could watch the needles go in because you didn't even feel them. But I still, to this day, have to lay down when I get blood work done, and I have to turn away, and I have to tell the girl, you have to give me first. When you get done swabbing my arm, touch where the needles, you're going to put the needle, and then give me a 3, 2, 1 countdown. There's a whole procedure with me with this thing.
Well, Brian, if you're listening, you're not the only one.
Nope. And they're like, and every time I go in, I'm like, they're about to bring me into room 2. I'm like, I need to go into room 4. They're like, why? I'm like, I need to lay down. Are you serious? Don't judge me.
That's so funny. I'm going to go through some of the chat and then we'll get back to us. This is my sister Deb saying hi. Sherry. This is Lynn. This is Lisa. And I have to say, I'm so sorry Sana could not make it today. She's got a power outage at home and just let me know about, 4:30, 5 o'clock that she couldn't make it. This is Lisa. This is Charlie. A lot of these people that I have met at meetups, like I was saying. Yep.
A lot of them I've chatted with in the 2KK and the Mighty Networks. Lisa and James.
Right. This, I believe, might be my niece. I'm not sure. I haven't seen. Jeff saying hit the thumbs. This is Karen from Low Carb Spin. They have a great
I watched their videos.
They are fantastic. I'm
Yeah, they
telling
really
you.
are. They're nice ladies. I like them a
Yeah, we
lot.
got to meet them at Hack Your Health. So
Yep, I
it
saw
was
that.
great. They're fantastic. Liked it, shared. Yeah, wow is right, Jeff says. Oh, wow.
Oh, it
So
gets
just,
better.
yeah, we're just touching on it.
Yeah, that's part one.
Yes. Yeah, I
That
don't
was
know
just that
how.
was just diagnosis, and that was a 2-year diagnosis that I got like
Right.
about 5 different misdiagnoses.
That's it's so crazy too. Lynn says the doctor actually said Cheerios were good for you. That's horrifying. It
Not
is.
so much good for you. She was just saying that it was the diabetes education counselor, and she was saying that 20 grams isn't that bad of a carb count for something of that nature. And in reality, Cheerios is the lowest carb count of any grain cereal that's out there. I compared all of them. So,
Right. Well,
um,
my I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, I had read an article when the doctors kept telling Brian that he needed carbs. His doctor out in New Hampshire. And it
right.
said the American Diabetes Association said it's okay for diabetics to have about 200 carbs a day. And I'm like, what are they trying to kill everybody? That's crazy.
Well, their
Sherry
idea
said it
is
sounds like what they tried to feed my diabetic husband at the hospital. Yep, it's
right.
crazy.
Their idea is that you should be able to eat whatever you want and dose the insulin for it. But the problem
Yeah,
is not all carbs are created equal, and they're going to hit the body at different stages, and you're supposed to keep up with that with the insulin, and it's impossible to do that. It's
right.
totally
And,
impossible to do that.
not only that, at least you're still alive to tell the tale, Karen says. That's right.
If I would have
It's not
gone
only
one
that.
more I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
If I would have gone one more month as a misdiagnosis or not being diagnosed, yeah, I was told by my endocrinologist if I would have gone one more month, I would have died.
Oh, well, you had lost so much weight. It was crazy.
Yeah, and my blood sugar
But
was just all over the place. I was in DKA
yes,
for months.
the doc, Dr. Bernstein's book, Diabetes Solution.
Diabetes Solutions. Yep.
It is such a great book. I had
Yeah.
bought it for Brian, and when we first started keto and all of that, and I read in there that whether you're diabetic or not, as a diabetic, the more insulin you have to inject, and as a non-diabetic, the more insulin your pancreas has to produce to offset what you're eating, the more harm you're doing to all of your organs in your body.
Right.
So whether you're diabetic or not, it's like it's a no-win situation with the carbs.
Yep. Yep.
James says, cover the carbs management. Yes. All right. So
That's
go ahead, Paul.
no, that's exactly it. Um, so like after I got the diagnosis and I got the instruction of what needed to be done, as far as insulin went, um, I started day one. Now I'm going to take a little step back. I had experience with low carb back in the late 90s when I lived in California. We finished a season, and one of the girls on the ladies professional tour and I were chatting, and she's like, yeah, that was a really long season. I go, yeah, now we're going to the off season with the holidays where we're trying not to put on the 15 pounds, from holidays. And she had mentioned to me that she was going to be starting the Atkins diet. And I had heard rumblings of Atkins back then because, West Coast, you hear all that stuff about the quote unquote healthy living. Gluten free was popular out there before it ever made its way across the country. So she gave me the ins and outs of what she was going to be doing, and I did it for that off season for about 3 months, and basically just avoided all the starches, all the carbs, all just did the protein and all that. And yeah, I mean, no holiday weight gain, and I didn't have to spend the next part of the beginning part of the year taking off this the added weight prior to the season starting. But do you think that went on any time beyond that? No, just that one season. So when I was diagnosed and thinking to myself, okay, I got to start reducing carbohydrates, I was like, oh yeah, wait a minute, we did that back in the late 90s. That's right. Well, around that time, a friend of mine was diagnosed with type 2 and started introducing me into all the Facebook groups for type 2 because when I was misdiagnosed as type 2, that's what I thought I had. That's where I kind of discovered Dr. Bernstein, but I didn't really know that much about him. Then I was diagnosed with type 1, and I started searching myself for some type 1 groups, particularly if I was going to get back to life as an athlete. Is it possible to be a type 1 athlete? Because I thought my life as an athlete was done. And I found a type 1 athletes group, but the problem was, not the problem, but the caveat was, this was diets all over the place. This was high carb, medium carb, low carb, keto, the whole 9 yards. So not really what I was looking for specifically to keto, but more like specifically to, can I lead my life as an athlete? And I found like all athletes from all walks of life over there, power lifters, CrossFitters, marathoners, triathletes. I was one of the very few beach volleyball players in there. So that was kind of cool, bringing my own niche to my own way to the sport through there. So I was like, okay, cool. My life as an athlete is not done. Now I got to figure out, is it safe to incorporate a low carb lifestyle into diabetes as an athlete? Because your mind always goes to, as an athlete, you need the carbs to be able to fuel yourself to make sure that you have the energy that you need. At that time, I started noticing this woman in a lot of the Facebook groups with type 1 and low carb. And turns out that she was a really elite level cyclist. And so I started paying attention to a lot of things that she was saying with type 1 and low carb, and how she did her protocols and what she was doing. And what really drew to her was that she had the most sarcastic wit to her. And I was like, okay, I got to get to know this girl because she's funny and she's informative. And so I direct messaged her and I was like, hey, what's up? Been paying attention to you in the type 1 groups. I really want to learn more about low carb type 1. How do I do this? What should I do? Do you have any resources? She's the one that introduced me full on into Dr. Bernstein and his group called Type 1 Grid. And that group is just chock full of people that follow his protocols and stick to a very low carb way. And all of them either have type 1 or are the parents of type 1 or are married to type 1s. So it's a very, very, very informative group because we're looking at every which way that you can do low carb and utilize your insulin strategies. The thing I learned from Dr. Bernstein that just made all the difference for me, carb counting, the little amount of carbs that I was eating, that was simple. I could do that. Count the carbs, dose the insulin, call it a day. What I learned from him, though, was protein dosing. And when it comes to type 1 low carb, when you're eating a lot of protein, that protein is going to break down in your system and is going to spike your blood sugar 4, 5, and 6 hours later. So you need to learn how to dose your insulin to cover the protein effect of that as well. Then you throw fat into the mix, and high amounts of fat can cause temporary insulin resistance with people with type 1. So you could be injecting all the insulin, but it's not doing you any good because you're resistant to that insulin that you're dosing for. So you have to learn how to dose your insulin for both of those. And people do that one of two ways. They either use an insulin called regular insulin or R insulin, which has a very long tail life, and it stays in your system and mitigates the protein spike and helps level that off. Or in the cases of people with pumps, we use what's called extended bolusing, where we can take a certain amount of insulin for our meal up front and dose the rest of it over time to help mitigate that protein rise. So Dr. Bernstein was very, very influential in teaching me how to learn how to do that, teaching me how to learn. I talk English good. Having me learn how to do that. And once I got that under my belt and learned how to do that effectively, everything else was pretty much smooth sailing. So that first year was a lot of learning, and I couldn't even return to my sport because I wasn't even close to getting my health back. So once I finally did figure all that out, then it paved the way to getting my health back and that was in 2014, 15. By about 2016 was when I was really starting to turn everything around.
Right. Sherry has a question.
Yeah.
What does a day of eating look like for you?
Sherry, I'm one of those people that I fell into OMAD quite accidentally. I was doing 2 meals a day, and what I was noticing was that I could eat 1 meal and I just wasn't hungry. And that's pretty much year round, even during my season. Now, I'm also not one of those people that I'm strict OMAD. So during my season, if I feel like I need to get a little bit of snacks later on in the day after training, or definitely during a tournament, I need to fuel during a tournament. But on days where I'm not having tournaments on the weekends, if I feel like I need to have a couple hard-boiled eggs or a couple slices of cheese or whatever, just because I've got some hunger pangs, I'm going to, because I just know what my body cues are. So my day of eating is very, very, very high protein, high amounts of protein, usually a salad to go with that. And that's my meal. And so I'm hitting my protein goal every day. Depending on what the protein is, I leverage the fat. Basically, they call fat a lever, try to have as much fat as you need so it's carrying you over to your next meal. Well, with me, it carries it over into the next day. And then keep the carbs at a minimum. So hope that answers your question. I don't have a day of eating as far as this is what I do on Monday, this is what I do on Tuesday. I just pick my protein every morning, and that's what I'm cooking.
Mm-hmm. So how much protein is your goal for the day?
Between 150 and 200 grams. Mm-hmm. So that's anywhere from like 2 boneless ribeyes to 20 to 24 ounce prime rib, to 3 boneless pork chops, to 2 to 3 chicken breasts. Just depends.
Nice.
And then I ask if I'm hungry after that.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So did you have any issues when you started getting rid of the rest of the carbs for the most part? Did you have a hard time transitioning? Because you had already been delving into the low carb stuff anyway.
Right. Yeah, no, because I was never a sweet eater to begin with. I was more savory. Sushi was my go-to. I loved sushi. That was a little bit difficult to get rid of, but I'm one of those people, like, if I just get it out of my brain, I don't think about it. To me, and this is not everybody I know, but to me, it's just food. Food doesn't have a hold on me. If I need to lose food because of health, I will. And I just make the decision to do it, and I do it. I'm one of those quick decision makers. When I make the decision to do something, I do it. Mm-hmm. And the nice thing was, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I mean, that's what everybody should be in this for anyway, is for better health.
Right.
Not everybody needs to lose weight. Not everybody, is in poor health, but there's something to this way of eating that has benefited everyone. Absolutely. It doesn't even matter.
No, absolutely. And a lot of the things that go with that, like I didn't learn about seed oils until about 2 to 3 years in, when somebody was mentioning it in the type 1 grit group. They were talking about canola oil and how all the seed oils are so bad for you and the inflammation. And I was like, Google seed oils. Okay. It's like, oh, they are bad. Okay. Who knew? And then I was like, okay, what kind of oils are okay? And at the time, coconut oil was the big thing, because it was high smoking point, and it wasn't a seed oil, and no inflammation benefit or side effects to it. So I was like, all right. So I started cooking with coconut oil, and worked out. Then avocado oil came into the mix, and then animal fat oil. Rendering your own tallow, rendering your own bacon fat. So saw the
Can't go wrong there.
Yeah, no, not at all. I was like, okay, that's free because I'm cooking it anyway.
That's right.
So yeah, Dr. Bernstein was definitely, guiding force for me to be able to get my health back. And I was able to return to my sport. When I was diagnosed, I don't think I mentioned my A1C. When I was diagnosed, my A1C was 14.4. And so, my goal was to try to get that down like real fast. It was about a year into it. It started coming down pretty much right out of the gate. So 14.4. 3 months later, I think I was down to about 11, because I was, undiagnosed for 2 years, that I was having to fight an uphill battle. A lot of people, they go low carb and their A1C dramatically drops. And me, I was fighting a 2-year battle that, I knew it wasn't going to happen overnight. All I could do was what. And by the 6th month, I was down to about 7.4. By the year end, I was down to about, I think, low 6s, maybe the high 5s. Starting in 2000, that was all of 15, 16, the first blood work of the year, my A1C was 4.9. And
Wow.
that was 2016. From 2016 to 2 months ago, my A1C has been between 4.4 and 4.9 that whole entire time. So
That is
totally
impressive.
consistent.
Absolutely impressive. When I met
Took a little
Brian,
while to get there, but
this pretty much answered Paul's question or Charlie's question for you. What do your lab numbers look like nowadays?
yep,
So it's
that's
pretty
them.
much it in a nutshell. My
Yep.
when I first met Brian, his A1C was like 16 or 17. Now he was, like I said, he was diagnosed at the age of 2, and this was just 20 years ago.
Right,
So he went through a long spell of just abusing the whole thing, just eating whatever he wanted to eat and trying to offset it. And, he's gotten his lowest at 6.1. When we started keto, he was at 7.9. And he keeps telling his
right.
endocrinologist, I can have a normal A1C just like you. And she said, I don't really want you to go much lower. He said, but I do, so, and that's, it's so impressive to hear. I mean, you're running 4.4 to 4.9 for so long. That's just incredible.
And the thing about that is, all these other type 1s that are not in the keto low carb communities, they automatically think, oh, you must be having a lot of lows. No, I just have controlled blood sugar. My blood sugar and like right now, my blood sugar is 62. So I obviously, and all day long, it's been between 62 is where I am right now, and I think the highest I got was 95. So
Now,
it's
how do
like,
you prevent that pump from beeping uncontrollably? Because when Brian hits 80 or even 75, that thing just sends out all these bells and whistles, and they say you can't bring it any lower. So it will, so he kind of freaks out and he tries to keep his sugars at about 70, 75, you know.
right.
It doesn't always happen,
My
but
CGM, yeah, my CGM, I can set the lowest I can set it manually is 60, and it has a hard alert at 55. 55 it considers urgent low. So you can't turn that off. So when I get to about, because I've been keto for so long, my body is used to fueling the tones that I, this is scary that like I say I have like one low every couple months, and it's usually exercise induced. So I don't feel it coming
mhm,
on because I have all the adrenaline going on in me and I'm doing whatever. And
right.
it's always after the fact. It's always after I'm done with training or I'm done with the tournament and I'm not feeling it. And it's just, and I haven't looked at my CGM, so I don't see that I'm dropping. Um,
Right.
so I did get a couple Smarties in me. We don't use glucose tabs. We use Smarties. So I get a couple Smarties in me because I'm so carb sensitive that I only need like 2 or 3, and my blood sugar goes up about 15 to 16 milligrams, and so I'm back into the safe zone.
So
But it,
Smarties are your sugar of choice.
yeah, because they're cheap, they taste better than glucose tabs, they're easier to get. Halloween, day after Halloween, I go and buy a huge bag, and I'm good
Yeah,
for the year. And they travel real well, because they go inside my hip pack, and when I'm traveling, they're always with me, kind of thing.
that's so you're just amazing.
So when
That's
you
like
so when I say that like my A1C is as low as it is, automatically people think, oh, you must be having a crap ton of lows. And I'm like, no, I just know how to control my blood sugar. I know how to dose my insulin. I don't eat a lot of carbs. Dr. Bernstein's theory is the law of small numbers. The fewer carbohydrates you take in, the less amount of insulin you have to dose for yourself. So there's no room for error. You're not going to overdo the insulin, and you're not going to underdo the insulin. So, you know,
right.
but
James
yeah,
says hardware, software programs for the majority, no doubt.
for real.
Tom says very impressive, Paul. It is. When I first heard your story, I think you were on Just Jason Keto's live stream, or
Right,
they recorded or whatever, however he did it then. But
right.
when I heard these 4.9 numbers, I had to. It's like Brian, you got to hear this, dude,
Yep.
because that's just so impressive. He's
I was watching from the sidelines in type 1 grid. I was seeing all these people at 4.5, 4.6, 4.7 when I was hanging at year. And I was like, I what am I doing wrong? And as soon as I really started paying attention to the types of carbs that I was eating, now we're talking, I'd already eliminated starches and grains and, all the crappy stuff. I was looking
right,
at the vegetables I was eating, and it was like, okay, like things like Brussels sprouts. I can't eat them. They affect me really bad. Some reason they affect my blood sugar. And
mhm,
so I have to pick and choose when I have them. And I have to dose insulin about 20 to 30 minutes ahead of time before I eat them. So
wow,
it's just things you learn about yourself, because not everybody reacts the same way to the different foods.
right, and everybody reacts differently. I know
Exactly.
it's just it's like keto, finding what works for you within the keto realm. It
Mhm.
with a diabetic, it's finding that sweet spot that works
Yep.
for you. Because Brian is like, oh, he has a tough time sometimes. Sounds like
Yeah.
you found mastery of your dietary needs. Well done, she says.
Yeah. It's
Yes,
weird because, like, whenever I've tried some new foods just to see, I'll, if it's a packaged food, like anything like a fresh food, like a vegetable, we have various resources that we can use to see what the carb counts are, and stuff
right.
like that. Like radishes. When I tried radishes for the first time, I had to, look on my pump has a food library, and it'll say roughly how many carbs in like a serving or whatnot, and what a serving is. So the first time I tried radishes as a potato swap out, I dosed what it told me that the carb count was, but within 30 minutes, my blood sugar was on a super spike. And I was like, what is going on? Then I realized, okay, radishes affect me differently than they probably affect other people, because I know
Wow.
other people can do them no problem.
Yeah, I
So
think Brian's vegetable of choice is mainly broccoli.
I'm with
I mean,
them.
I typically don't cook a lot of vegetables because I try not to eat them.
Right.
It like today we went out. We went to Logan's Roadhouse for lunch, and he had a steak and broccoli and a salad. Now, how he dosed for that, I have no idea. No croutons in the salad, light dressing on the side, or the ranch dressing,
He had a salad. What else?
and broccoli and a steak.
I would guess, depending on what was on the salad, my guess would be 12 carbs.
Interesting. I know he's listening.
Depending
He's
if
out in
there's
the other room.
cucumbers. Yeah, the types of lettuces that were used,
Right.
cucumbers, if yes or no, onions, if yes or no, don't know. But my salads, I make a good size tossed salad every single night. And I'm one of those people, like, I don't do the dark lettuces because lettuce seriously has no nutritional value whatsoever. It's just a vehicle, let's be honest.
Mm.
And so I just go iceberg because it's cheap, it's crunchy, and it's cool. That's why I use it. Plus, it's one of
Yeah.
the lower carb ones, so I don't have to worry about any kind of like, is the fiber going to stay with me? Is it going to treat my blood sugar any differently? That kind of thing. So iceberg or romaine, cucumbers, hard boiled egg, and avocado. That's my salad every single night. And depending on the size that I do, it's anywhere from 9 to 12 carbs.
Yeah.
So
Well,
now
he
with
had his
his
salad. Obviously, it was made at the restaurant. He asked for no
right
croutons. It did have tomatoes on it. He won't
did
eat cucumbers. It did
right
have tomatoes.
yeah okay. So throw in
And
another
then,
6 carbs for the tomatoes.
right. And then he uses the ranch dressing that we have him
Right,
put on the
about two
side
carbs
rather
on
than
that.
dousing it. Yeah. So,
Right.
Brian, I know you're listening back there. Put down what you put for carbs in there just for ha-has for your meal. He's in the other
Yeah,
room
because
watching.
broccoli is 8 carbs in a cup, minus about 4
Mm.
for fiber. So depending if he doses for fiber or not, I dose the whole thing for broccoli. I don't do net carbs for that. I'll do total for that.
Right. Yeah, Tom Garvey says tomato paste blew my sugar
Oh,
well over 240. Cortisone shots sent me over 400. You really have to
because
watch.
it's
Wow.
because tomato paste is condensed. So think of it
Right.
as fruit. When you dry fruit, it condenses. It what's the word? It super makes the sugar much higher than if you just ate a
Right.
piece of fruit. Same thing with tomato paste. It's condensed, so the sugar is more concentrated. That's the word I was looking
Oh, he should know that. He's a chef.
for.
Tom Garvey is.
Ah,
Concentrates.
oh, keto cook. Yeah.
Yeah. Tom Garvey, the keto cook.
Yeah, see, that's
And
the
Charlie
thing. I
said
mean, I've always loved to
concentrates.
cook. Yes, thank you. um, I've always been like a cook. I love to cook myself, but ever since starting, you know, like hard in on keto in 2015, um, like very rarely do I go out to dinner. The only time I really do, one of my jobs that I have is I'm a quality assessment officer with various restaurants in the area. So I'll go into the restaurants and I'll, as a mystery shopper, if you will, and I'll, you know, rate them on customer service and timing and cleanliness and all that stuff. So one of the big clients that we have is Outback Steakhouse. So that's about the only time I go out to eat is when I get a mystery shop for Outback
Yeah,
because somebody else is paying for it.
that's right. That's good. That's good. The only reason we went there, we went to Logan's today, is I had a 20% off coupon for anything over $25. So you get a steak, it's going to be over that.
Oh yeah, I'm all about the coupons.
Charlie wants to know, do you ever have cheat meals?
I can't, Charlie. I just can't because I've been on keto for so long that if I have a cheat meal, I'm going to be having high blood sugar for 3 days and I'm going to have to dose insulin and dose insulin and dose insulin and keep dosing insulin for 24 to 48 hours to even get my blood sugar back to normal. There's been times, you know how you're not supposed to, and I'm sure you know this, Cindy, with Brian. You know how, like, when you inject insulin, you're not really supposed to do any kind of exercise because it ends up super speeding the insulin, and then there's a chance you drop
Mhm.
low. There's been times that I'm up over 300 because I thought I could handle, and I dosed about 3 units of insulin, 3 or 4, which is a lot for me because normally I only dose 2 for a meal. And so I dosed about 3 or 4 units of insulin and went for a run just to get that insulin to work faster to be able to get my blood sugar back down because I was so high. So that happened once, and I cannot afford cheat meals. I just can't.
No, it's not worth it. That's why Brian just stays pretty strict. This is my
Right.
husband, this Dale 38S. He was a big Dale Earnhardt fan. He dosed 30 units, but he also had grilled onions and mushrooms on his steak.
You took 30 units of rapid acting?
He
Oh,
uses Humalog, so I don't know if that's
yeah,
fast
so do
acting.
I.
Yeah.
Yeah, I use that too, but 30 units? That's a lot.
Yep.
Ooh. What's your insulin to carb ratio, Brian? That's
That shows
interesting.
on his pump, right?
Right. Well, technically you should know it, but even if you don't, yeah, it's on your. I was
Time
making
garbage.
no
I was
sugar
making
barbecue.
no sugar. So
Oh,
introducing
sorry.
some veggies back into my diet. No good. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't
You
care
know
for them. I was like,
what's funny is I do better with Sweet Baby Ray's sugar free, and occasionally I'll have G Hughes, even though I don't like it as much. I do better with them than I do if I try to make my own sugar free barbecue sauce. That's
yeah, I
the
like
fresh
the
ingredient hit my blood sugar for some reason. But
I
the
like the
fake
G
stuff
Hughes
used in
sauces.
bottle.
But we'll see if Brian can find that. I don't think it's in his
Yeah.
head.
No, no big
I don't.
deal. It's just 30 just struck me as a lot because like my one meal, the most I'll take is three, and I have the same thing. It's like a protein, the salad, and if I decide to have broccoli, that's usually about 12 to 15 carbs. So for me, because my insulin to carb ratio is 1 to 6, for every gram of carbs I eat, I take, I'm sorry, for every 6 grams of carb I eat, I take 1 unit of insulin. So
Maybe
15 grams of carbs
maybe
would
what
be
he's
about
saying is maybe this 30 is how many carbs he calculated he would be eating.
that could be. Yeah.
That could be
Okay.
it. Because he didn't make that
Yep.
clear. I wasn't sure if that
Yeah,
was
that makes more
because that
sense.
is a lot. That is a lot.
Yeah. 30 units is like, you know, that's somebody that eats all the carbs. They usually take
Hmm.
30 units at once.
Yeah, that could be what he meant. That he calculated 30 carbs for his
Calculated
meal.
30 carbs. Right. Right.
That's probably about right because
Um,
the onions, the mushrooms, the salad, the broccoli,
yeah.
the tomatoes on
Yep.
the salad, that
Yep.
and the salad dressing. Yep.
Yep. That does sound right. Yep. Yeah.
So
The
yeah,
question I
I've
asked
got
was how
him
many units.
using
I was confused.
I got him started using a tracker, my fitness
Mhm.
pal. People may not think it's the greatest, but it's okay. It tells you how many carbs are in how much, what food, and how much. And he's done well with it, actually.
Brian, what
So
pump are you on?
I don't
Or
know
do you know,
yet.
Cindy?
I don't. I know he has a Dexcom 7 for the
Right. That's
CGM.
the CGM. Yeah.
I'm not sure
Brian,
what
does your
pump it
pump
is
have
though.
a food library in it? If you have an Omnipod, it does, but I'm not sure about any others.
I know it's not an Omnipod.
Right. I'm not sure if the
He just
Medtronic
came in the door. He can't
G1D
hear you.
badass is in the house.
What, Brian? A too slim?
T Slim.
Yeah,
T Slim.
X2 or something like that.
The tandem. Yeah. I'm not sure if it has a food library in it. My Omnipod does have a food library, so just on a quick, if I something new that I'm unfamiliar with, like I had to look up asparagus the other day.
Yeah, he
And
said it
read
does
it.
not have a food library in it.
Yeah, yeah. And the newer Omnipods do not either. The Omnipod 5, I know, does not.
I'm just
So,
replying about sauna.
mhm. Yeah, but so going back to finding Bernstein and all that, the whole type 1 grit group, the whole thing just taught me going forward exactly what I needed to do to remain low carb, how to dose my insulin, how to dose the insulin for the protein, and then I was able to get healthy enough to get back into training. And in 2016, I got back into beach volleyball and brings us right
Very
up to date.
nice.
So,
That's awesome.
yeah, how to live life as a type 1 athlete.
Yeah, it's so impressive because I like with Brian when we bowl a few nights a week, and
Right,
at any given time he'll be sitting there and he'll grab out something to start eating because the sugars are dropping, and
right,
it's like because he's active. The more active he
right,
is, the lower they're going to be, and I mean it's just it's a sometimes it seems to him it's a losing battle. You know when he does get the highs and
right,
they don't want to come down.
right.
He even asked Dr. Barry at one of the conferences about that. And he said, Dr. Barry told him, unfortunately, as a type 1 diabetic, those crazy highs can happen in a blink of an eye with no
Any reason,
explanation
at any
and
time,
just
the body
nothing.
is going to do what it wants to do. That I call type 1 diabetes, I call it's the daily science experiment because you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's
My blood
crazy.
sugar has gone up to 250 for absolutely no reason. No food,
Yep.
no drink, no nothing. And it's not even like a dawn phenomena because I don't get that anymore. I'm so tired of everybody talking about dawn phenomena. And it's not 100% across the board for everybody.
Right.
I had it for about a year and now I don't suffer from it anymore. So it's not dawn phenomena with me. It's my body decided it wanted to be a jerk and just jack my blood sugar up to 250. So here I am dosing insulin for it.
You still listening? Okay. Because that with
Hey,
this on, he can't
hey
hear.
Brian, question for you. I'm sorry.
I said, with me having these on, he can't hear, but he's listening to
Ah,
it on his phone. But go ahead.
gotcha.
You had
Brian,
a
I have a
question.
question for you because Cindy was alluding to when you guys go bowling that your blood sugar is starting to drop because of your activity level. Do you ever do a temporary basal on your pump, temporary reduction of basal to help mitigate that? Because I do have to do that as well when I go into beach volleyball training during my practices. If I keep my basal at the same level as I normally do during just the day, then I will drop low. So I have to do a temporary basal of about 40% lower to be able to offset any blood sugar lows.
Okay.
If you by chance do that.
He said, no, he doesn't. It's not often that he has the low problem, but
Okay.
that's something to keep in mind, though.
Yeah.
Do what?
Especially when you're on a pump. Yeah, that's the beauty and the advantages of being on a pump because you can make split section decisions, unlike people who do the shots. Once that insulin's in you, it's in you. And
Right.
there's been people I know that have grabbed the wrong insulin pen because the basal insulin, usually you're taking anywhere from 12 to 24 units because it needs to last inside you for 24 hours. They grabbed the wrong pen and injected 24 units of rapid acting insulin. So once they realized they did that, then all of a sudden they have to start eating all the carbs to prevent a low blood sugar crash and possibly a
Right.
coma. So, that's one of the reasons why I love being on a pump as well, because I have never had that kind of an error before. So,
Right. Well, when he first got his pump, he thought he was invincible now. He said, now I can eat anything I want. And it's way before we started keto.
right.
Cheesecake is his big thing.
Hmm.
And he would sit there. We would get one from the store, big multi-flavored cheesecakes that are already pre-cut, all that stuff. And he wouldn't just grab one slice of it. He would get two and he'd sit there at night and eat it and then go to bed. No wonder his blood sugar his A1C was so high and all that.
Yeah.
But he did. He thought, oh, now I've got this pump. I've got constant insulin going in. I'll be good and I can do whatever. And it was like, he learned. He learned definitely. That's
When I
crazy.
got my pump, I was 1 foot in, 1 foot out of low carb. For the most part, I was low carb, but every now and then on a
Mhm.
weekend, I would have like a dessert or something like that. But I was like him. I was like, I got my pump. I got this. I can do this. And I was like, okay, but I don't have a CGM and I don't like finger poking myself. So I was finger poking myself at 12 noon, thinking that, oh, okay, I was at 91 at 12 noon. That's going to last me for 12 hours. Not a problem. Yeah, okay. 12 hours later, I would do a second finger stick of the day and wonder why I was 250.
Yeah.
So when I got the
Karen
CGM,
says,
though,
can your
oh, go ahead.
Karen wants to know, can your blood sugar spike because of regular stress of daily life? If so, what would one do to lower it? Yeah, Brian's can.
Karen,
What
right
about
now,
you?
I just got let known by my landlady that she's selling her house, and I was let known 2 weeks ago, and I was going to have to find a place. I have been under so much stress these last 2 weeks looking for a new place that my blood sugar has not been very cooperative. So the only thing you can do is dose insulin for it, or work out, just mitigate your insulin on a natural basis. You go for a workout and use whatever, energy that you have to bring it down on its own. But I haven't had time to do that, so I'm just dosing the insulin.
Yeah. There are times where Brian will do that. I said, did you push some numbers in? And his doctor would tell him, don't do that. Don't try to trick your pump. Don't. I'm like, so you're just supposed to stay up there and let it linger
No,
and slowly come down?
you're not tricking your
Definitely.
pump. It's called doing a correction. You're doing a correction bullet.
Mhm. I keep telling him,
Oh
I'm
my
like,
gosh,
push some
these
numbers in because
doctors
the
tell
longer
me
you stay high, the higher your A1C is
the
going
more
to be,
organ.
the worse you're going to feel. And it's
The
like,
deal is when your blood sugar gets above 140, the longer it stays above 140, that's when organ damage starts happening. So at the 140 mark, yeah, it's not going to be major if you're at like 141, but that's like the red light. You don't want to go much above 140, and you want to try to get your blood sugar below 140 as soon as possible, because that is when the organ damage starts happening. You don't know what. I suffered from diabetic neuropathy prior to getting my true diagnosis. I started with a little feeling in my big toe, and it got to the point in 3 months where I had to wear sandals in the winter time with socks because I couldn't stand sneakers being on my feet. It just hurts so bad. When
wow.
I finally got control of my blood sugars, I still to this day suffer from neuropathic feelings of it, but right now it doesn't hurt as much as it feels like two anacondas are always on my feet squeezing. That's all it feels like. No pins or tingly feeling or anything like that. Just a constant state of they feel like they're being squeezed.
Wow.
So my blood sugar was way above the 140 for so long that was one of the damages that I had from it. And I already know that it's not reversible for me. I have to live with this the rest of my life.
Absolutely. It's like with Brian, it's been 60 years now. He's
Mhm.
62. And it would be great if they could find a cure for this. But, I don't think it'll ever be in his
Yeah.
lifetime. It would be amazing. They've done, I guess they've done in other countries, pancreas transplants. And
Mhm.
that's interesting. That's probably the only thing
They've
that
done
would
them.
that would do
They've,
it.
they've done them in this country too, but the problem is you have to be on so many immunosuppressants that it's not worth it. It's just not.
I'm
There's no
sure.
guarantee that it's going to stay long term. Um,
Mhm.
the side effects from it are just terrible. I was
Yep.
just reading a
That's
study
especially.
earlier this week. I can't remember where it was out of. It was a trial going on of 12 participants, and it was in Diabetes Daily. And I don't remember the exact details of it. It was impressive, but again, you were having to constantly feed your body the immunosuppressants because type 1 is autoimmune. So you
Yep.
inject healthy beta cells and your body will either kill them or you take immunosuppressants. Wow, tongue twister. To stave those. from being killed by your body.
Right. I have a question for you. I know when Brian was young, he had some serious strength. Do you find that as a type 1 diabetic, you have more strength than if you hadn't been or when you weren't?
Well, prior to getting diagnosed, I had lost so much muscle mass, so there was no strength. I've steadily gotten it back. So I'm no, like if I'm comparing from before type 1 to now, there's really no difference as far as like, you know, massive strength gain. But, you know, I'm not one of the athletes that I'm looking to gain mass because I try to keep my body as lean as possible just because of the sport that I do. It's very anaerobic and it's very like put forth a bunch of energy at once and then do a quick recovery before the next serve and then all the energy and then quick recovery. So my sport is very anaerobic and very, think of it like HIIT, HIIT, high intensity interval training. That's kind of what my sport is. It's a bunch of energy, recover, bunch of energy, recover, so on and so on and so on.
Right.
So I don't look to bulk. I just look to keep my muscles healthy and injury free as much as possible. I do try to build my legs as much as possible. I'm one of those people, I don't skip leg day. So I am constantly doing legs, you know, squats and hamstrings and leg curls and stuff like that. And quadricep lifts and
right. When Bryant was younger, he used to go play golf with his dad and his uncles and all that. And there was one instance that I've been told about that I don't know if it was a low or a high, but he had a sugar reaction. And they were trying to pin him down. It must have been a low, or high to give you some insulin. And he wasn't having it. He lifted these grown men off of him like they were nothing. And he was probably a teenager. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to make you mad. But yeah, he was just, it was crazy and he's lifted up the back end of a vehicle just because he could.
Yeah.
I mean, he's
okay.
He used to be. He's lost a lot of that as he's gotten older.
Right.
How common is it for an adult to be diagnosed of type 1 later in life? Seems like it's getting more and more common.
That's it. It's becoming much more common. In fact, more of the people that I see are getting diagnosed as adults than I've seen with kids as of late. I'd never heard of it when I was diagnosed. I had never heard of adults getting diagnosed with insulin-dependent type 1.
How old were you when you were diagnosed, Paul?
44, so 10 years ago. It'll be 10 years this October.
He just told us how old he is, too. But yeah.
And my birthday's April 1st.
I'm sorry?
And my birthday's April 1st. Go figure.
April 1st. Nice. You're not a fool.
No. We don't know each other that well.
No, but
I'm the constant humor guy. I try to make people laugh in like every situation. So
that's fantastic because laughing is good. It's definitely a good thing. It beats the alternative all to heck and back. For sure.
For sure. One of these days I'll make it to a conference of some sort.
Yes, that would be awesome. That would be really nice. So you had mentioned you were in Florida and then you went to California. Where are you now? Where are you located now?
I was born in upstate New York and I moved back here in 2004. And that was after living in Southern California and continuing on my pro career out there. So I moved back to my area of New York and been back here since. Was supposed to be back in California by 2007, and that didn't happen. And been here ever since. So it
So you're back in the
was
cold weather.
exactly after being in Florida and then California. It didn't take me long for my body to readjust, but oh God, I missed Christmases on Manhattan Beach, California. Oh, those were the best Christmases.
Yeah. Brian
um,
was born and raised in New Hampshire. So you
I
talk about brutal winters. There
was
they
just gonna
are.
say New
Yep.
England for sure.
Yep. But any tips or any advice you would give someone who is struggling with their blood sugars or
Yeah,
has unexplained high blood sugars and
yeah.
what their next step should be?
If well, like in my case, I didn't know that I was having high blood sugars because nobody thought to do a blood sugar test on me. I was diagnosed with everything under the sun and misdiagnosed with everything before a blood test was even done on me. It was about 6 months into the misdiagnoses that they finally did a blood sugar test, and then I was diagnosed as type 2. So if you feel like, okay, one of the things I equated this to, when I've gone on cruises, when I come home, I'm 3 days land sick. I'm dizzy. I feel my equilibrium is all shot off. I feel like I'm still on the boat. I noticed it when I go into ports as well, but because I go right back in the boat, I slips my mind. But the 2 cruises that I went on, I came home and I was land sick for 3 days. When I got down to Australia that last time, I felt that same feeling that I always get, but it went away in 3 days. When I came home, the dizziness did not go away. And that's when all the symptoms started. My friends down in Australia noticed I had lost a little bit of weight, but nowhere near the extreme that I ended up being. But I couldn't shake the dizziness. That's what prompted me to go to the doctor, and that's what prompted them to um, diagnosed me with benign positional vertigo and gave me all the exercises to do that didn't do anything. So it's rough because if you don't know that you've got high blood sugar or you don't know what's going on with your health, you're hoping that your doctor is maybe going to do a finger stick and just check your blood sugar. But 9 times out of 10, that only gets done at a physical. And if you're there just as a routine appointment because you're not feeling well, the thing on a PCP's mind is to check blood sugar. I mean, you can ask for it, but it's how many people are going to automatically think that. So,
Right.
To answer your
I had a leg
question,
up. Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I had a little bit of a leg up with living with a type 1 diabetic. I started having
Right,
hypoglycemic episodes, low blood sugar, after gastric
right.
bypass 2 years
Mhm.
previous. So I went and bought a meter, just a little
Right,
over the counter thing. So when I didn't feel well, that's what I knew I needed to check it and just
right,
do what I needed to do. I was never diagnosed as diabetic. This is totally as a result of the gastric bypass that I had.
right,
And I mean, it was just horrible. My blood sugars would get down in the 40s, and for just because I ate something that was a little carby, and I didn't eat enough protein to offset it.
right,
So, but anyway, to go along with that, what you would do or what you would recommend, I would personally recommend get a meter. If you think you're off a little bit, they're not that expensive over the counter, and just check it. If your doctors aren't
right.
checking it, just check it because
Right. And that would be in a perfect world, but how many people, do they automatically come to think that unless they know or are related to somebody with diabetes where it's in the family? Because me, it wasn't
right,
in my family.
right,
So I had no reason to think that this was something with diabetes, none whatsoever. Um,
absolutely. Is type 1
so I
diabetes associated with other autoimmune problems or thyroid issues?
It can be. We like to joke that when you get diagnosed as type 1, the next autoimmune comes right with it. With me, 3 months later, I was diagnosed with celiac. So I had the double whammy, both type 1 and gluten. So it
Wow.
can affect thyroid, and there are several tests that can be done for thyroid. The full panels that you get. I know Nisha Berry has had thyroid problems, and she speaks to that very well. As
Yes.
far as the testing that needs to be done, I know in the type 1 grit group we have several people that have thyroid issues, and they've listed out all the tests that you need to get done, all the full entire panel. A lot of the times the doctors that you request the test from, they will push back and not want to do, especially the reverse T3, I know is a big one that they don't like to do, and possibly reverse T4. There's a couple of them that they just want to push back on. And just for me being preventative, I was like, I want the full panel done. Don't tell me no, just order it and let's go. So, you know,
Yeah.
that's how I knew my thyroid was in no danger.
In Brian's case, he has no other autoimmune problems that we know of anyway. And it's been,
Yep.
like I said, 60 years. So it
Yep.
depends on the person, Susie.
Totally. Totally. But
Yeah.
that's the biggest
It's
joke that we run is like anybody that's
yeah.
diagnosed one right after another. It's like, yep, diabetes and the brother.
Yeah,
And
it's
what's funny is I was only in emergency overnight when I got the type 1 diagnosis. I didn't have to go back at all because I went right on insulin. When I got when I got the celiac diagnosis, I ended up having, I don't even know what caused it. If I had to trace it back, I think I had soy sauce, which has gluten in it. And I could not leave the bathroom for like 12 hours. And I ended up passing out from dehydration. And I was checking my blood sugar all day long with my Dexcom, and my blood sugar wasn't low at all. But I ended up going unconscious because I passed out from dehydration. And my roommate called the ambulance, and they thought it was low blood sugar or whatnot, and were giving me all the glucagon to try to get my blood sugar back up. I'm like, I finally gained back to consciousness. I'm like, I did not have low blood sugar, but they get me in the ambulance, take me over, and it was 10 in the hospital before I got the true diagnosis of celiac. So 10 days to get the celiac, but less than 1 day to get the type 1.
wow. That's that's just crazy.
Yeah. And then the meals they were trying to serve me while I was having celiac, while I was in for celiac. I'm like, you
Don't
guys
tell me
realize
we
sometimes they're more worried about gluten free than they are low carb with me. And I'm like, stop serving me all this stuff that I don't eat anymore. I just want meat and salad. That's it.
yes. It's incredible what is being served in the hospitals, and you hear it so widespread across this community that I'm not going to eat it. You can give it to me, if I'm not going to eat it.
Right. Right. It got to the
That's
point where I
crazy.
requested the guy who was the head of food service came to my room every single night. And he's like, what is it exactly that we can prepare for you? I'm like, in reality, I'm not interested in anything you've got to serve. Just give me bacon and eggs 3 times a day. And I'm talking like I want 6 eggs and 10 bacons, breakfast, lunch, dinner. Everybody on my floor was so jealous of me because when they were bringing my meal down the hallway, all they could smell was the bacon.
Yep, without a doubt. That would have been like, "Hey, I'm going to follow the food." Yes.
Exactly. But yeah, it was about the third day, and I finally just sat the guy down. The only other thing I requested was chicken salad, just to, they would people that were staying multi nights, they would stack the refrigerator inside the patient's rooms. We all shared a refrigerator, so if we got hungry, like later on in the night, we could, like have a pack of whatever food that we wanted in there. So I requested chicken salad, so I always had something in case I was hungry because I was still at the point where I was trying to put weight back on and my hunger hadn't stabilized. So I was like still constantly hungry because it was only 3 months after my diagnosis.
Right, right. Michael says he loves bacon. Lisa can never go wrong with bacon. So that's for
Nope.
sure.
And that was funny because I was just starting to really embrace keto, because keto, it wasn't called keto back then. Back then it was called low carb, high fat. It was the
Mhm.
LCHF phase of this whole dichotomy, if you will.
Right.
And keto didn't really come into like nomenclature until about 2015 or 16. And that's when, it started making its rounds as keto. Um, I never embraced the low carb, high fat type of deal because Dr. Bernstein, before I even found him, I was like, why would I eat a bunch of fat when I really don't need it, when I'm more about the protein? So I went low carb, high protein right out of the gate. And then I just consumed the fat that came with the protein. I just didn't add extra fat to it.
Right.
And then once keto came around, everybody was calling it the high fat diet, the high fat diet. I'm like, no, that's not what this diet is. Keto is extreme carb reduction. How you want to do your macronutrients after that, that's up to you. But it's not a high fat diet. It's also not a high protein diet. It's whatever you want to make it for yourself. But everybody in all these Facebook groups was, anytime I was talking to somebody about like a higher protein type of regimen, you're doing it wrong. Keto is high fat. It's not high protein. It's this, it's that. You're wrong. I'm like, and I had some knockdown, drag out arguments with people, and I'm just like, it's just low carb. That's all it is. That's the common denominator.
Yeah. That's the keto police for you. They're going to come at you
I
no
don't know.
matter what you do. It doesn't even
Jeez.
matter.
And see, I had been following. I don't know if you're familiar with a group on Facebook. It's called Keto Gains. It's basically, they're not type 1, but they are athletes that are really into weight loss and weightlifting, powerlifting, that kind of thing. And
Mhm.
the guy that runs keto, the two guys that run Keto Gains, Tyler and Luis, they have always been high protein, low carb. They do talk about calorie mitigation, and I do agree that calories matter. But I also know that a calorie is not a calorie. So you have to use some wise education when we're talking about calorie intake. Because if you eat 900 grams of fat every single day, you're going to gain weight. That's just the way it is. It's the same as eating keto treats. But if you're having something like a ribeye that has about this much fat with this much protein, not so much. It's still a higher fat piece of meat, but it's not like you're just eating fat for the sake of eating fat. And that's what these people were telling these people with the high fat keto mindset. That's what they were telling these other folks to do who were new to the keto game. So, oh, you just need to eat more butter. Oh, you just need to eat more fat. You just need to add a ton of fat to your diet. Like, wait a minute, they're in this for weight loss. They don't need a ton and tons of fat. It's
Right.
That's not the deal. You want to make sure you're satiated, but you don't want to overdo it where you're taking in more calories than what your body could even remotely expend.
Yep.
So
Lisa has a question. She said, you
yeah.
don't mind that eating a high abundance of protein spike your blood sugar. Also, is there a cutoff when you stop eating for the day?
Lisa, no, because the way I dose my insulin and the timing that I know my insulin takes, I don't ever get a spike. My blood sugar stays steady because of the timing that I do with my insulin. If I didn't take there was a couple times this month that I totally forgot I was diabetic and didn't take any insulin before I ate. And then I realized it an hour later. And by that time, the protein had already gotten into me and was starting to break down. And like I was going to have to deal with a spike later on. But as long as I'm pre-dosing my insulin before I eat and I take a certain amount prior to the meal and then let the other percentage trickle on for over an hour, I don't ever get a blood sugar spike. So, and then is there a time I'm done? What does that
Is
say?
there a
Stop
cutoff
wearing the
time
gold?
when you stop eating for the day? I think she meant
Oh,
eating.
eating. Okay. I try not to eat after the one meal. So I usually eat about 3 o'clock. And usually I don't eat after that. Once in a great while, maybe once every couple of weeks, I'll have a Ninja Creamy now that I finally have a machine. But it's rare. I have to be in the mood for it. So yeah, no, not usually. I usually stop about 4 to 5, anywhere from 5 o'clock is usually when I'm like cleaning up the kitchen and calling it a day.
Nice. Yeah, we don't do
Now
one meal a
that's
day, but
that's
we've done
in
2 meals.
right. Now again, this is when I'm not in season. When I'm in season, then if I feel like I need more fuel, I just take more fuel and I don't worry about it. I'm not one of those people that, yes, I do OMAD, but I'm not like strict OMAD. I'd rather listen to my body and know what my body needs and give it the fuel that it needs than have to worry about, oh, I'm strictly an OMAD person. I'm not strictly anything. I'm strictly low
Right.
carb and that's about it.
You're strictly a type 1 diabetic that's controlling your insulin, your blood sugar.
Pretty
That's
much,
what you
yeah.
strictly
Yeah.
are. And
Like
it's just
I'm just
fantastic.
Yeah, I'm just basically, I listen to my body and I know what my body needs when it needs it, and I don't ever second guess it, kind of thing. I've gotten to know my body very well over the last 10 years.
You have to, because they're not going to do it for you.
Exactly. Oh, I would
Yeah.
pay somebody.
You pay somebody. You're paying doctors big time, and they don't do it for you.
I know that like I'm a very niche type interviewee, like type 1, and you don't find many type 1s in the general keto community. Me and Brian, like when I got interviewed by Jason, we were talking about it, and I'm like, there's only 4 people that I know that are in the keto community Facebook groups that I'm in that have type 1, and Brian was one of them, and I only know 2 others besides me.
Yeah.
So we're not very widespread like we would be in the type 1 grit Dr. Bernstein group, where all of us are type 1 and all of us are low carb.
Right. It's it's a tough thing, that's for sure, and it
Right.
can be so not understood, because when you get those high numbers that just won't come down, and you fight them all day, and I've seen them do it, and it's just, oh my God, is there anything I can do? No. It's going to
That
happen.
some days you just have to. Now, some people, like Dr. Bernstein, talks about how to do an intramuscular injection. That's where you take a syringe with a certain gauge needle and you inject it right into the muscle, and it's supposed to have the insulin react much, much quicker than just taking a normal, like dose through the skin, like, wherever you wear your pump or your take your injection. It's called an
Right.
intramuscular, and it actually reacts about 30 minutes sooner than taking a normal type of insulin dose. I've had the high blood sugars that I've had to dose through my pump. I'm too afraid to do an IM. I don't like needles to begin with, and the last thing I want to do is put one into my deltoid and have to worry about that. But I
Well,
know a lot of
I was
people
just
in,
I was just going to say that's something Brian wouldn't do either. We already talked about that. He hates needles.
yeah, yeah,
It's like he had fallen a few years ago, and he broke his left wrist, his right heel, and his left ankle. So all he had is his right hand. And
oof,
even to put his pump on, because it has that little needle there,
yep,
I could not do it for him or he would have passed out. I could
right,
hold pinch his skin so he could do it, but he wouldn't let me. He's like, nope, 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 not. He can give himself his shots or put his pump on himself. But if I would come at him with a needle, he'd be on the floor. At just that's it.
yep. I tell you, when I
It
was diagnosed, they were having to do tons and tons of blood work with me, and I was I literally felt like a human pincushion those first three
Yep.
months. And then I'll never forget when I got brought into emergency with when I passed out from celiac. Um, they found the vein, but they kept like breaking the needle. I don't know what the technical medical term is. They break the needle or they miss the vein or something like that. It took them 4 tries before they could get an IV in me. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to kill somebody because these last 3 months I've been nothing but a pincushion.
James says, thank you for being here. And
James,
absolutely.
it's good seeing you, man. Long time no see.
He's actually in New York at the moment, visiting
Ah,
his mother. So,
yeah, I saw greetings from New York City, and I was like, I didn't know Lisa and James lived in New York. And then, yeah, it finally dawned on me.
yeah, he's there visiting his mom. But anyhow, I don't want to take up any more of your time. We've been
No
an hour and a
problem.
half already.
Yeah,
And I want to thank everyone that's here in the chat. And I mean, Paul just has a phenomenal story. And I'm so thankful to you, Paul, for coming on and sharing that.
well,
And
thank you for
please
having me. It was
share,
awesome.
share that, share that, share it, share it. Because there's so many people that need to hear these stories.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
anyway, everybody have a great weekend. And I will see you next week.
Thanks again, Cindy.